Today's episode of the Kim Jacobs Show. Listen, we have a great show lined up for you. I'm your host, Kim Jacobs, better known as the Balance Doctor. And all of our guests that come on, they're either people that have overcome some tremendous odds in their own lives as they balance this thing called life, or they're experts and they're here to share tips and strategies that will help you better balance and manage your life. Grab your virtual seats and let's get ready for some real, relevant, and relatable content on today's episode of the Kim Jacobs Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Kim Jacobs Show. How are you, Jill Reynolds, over there? You busy woman?
I am fabulous because I am with my sister from before my marriage. I was Jill Jacobs before. Now I'm Jill Reynolds.
Okay. I'm glad to have you here today. I know that you're, just so everybody in the virtual studio audience knows, she's coming from another interview that she is like hot off the press, everybody. Okay. So in high demand. So she's been on another interview and then quickly coming over here to spend some time with us today to help bring balance to the world, just again, one household at a time. So Jill, I know you have a tremendous story to share with people. And I don't want you to just jump right into it, but I do want people to have an idea of what they're going to learn from today's discussion. So if you would, do us the honors.
Well, because you're the balance doctor, I always, I have a big story. So sometimes the Holy Spirit says, which way should we go? So I think we'll go right into balance. Let's just go right into balance in resiliency. So part of my story is that I'm 41 years recovered from crack cocaine addiction and alcohol, 31 years recovered from codependency, and 8 years from eating disorders. And so when I went to treatment 5 times, Kim, for my eating disorder, which was restricting meals. I would restrict breakfast and lunch and then binge eat at dinner. And then I had a lot of trauma. So I went to treatment. And in treatment, one of the things that we were taught, which was really cool, is when your life gets out, when your life gets out of balance, when you're either binging or restricting on different things in life. And so we'll just start right off with that. So for everyone listening, if you have a piece of paper handy, and on one side of the piece of paper, you write down things you binge on. On the other side of the paper, write down
things you binge on. So things you binge on one side.
And things restrict in the other column. So for example, I'll let you do this too, Kim. So on one side, I'll name some things that I know that are common. So on one side, things we might binge on is work, binging on work.
Okay. And so literally grab a sheet of paper, everybody, and put a line down the middle and put things you binge on one side and things you restrict on the other. But before we go into the exercise, I do want to give everyone a chance to go into your virtual seats and grab your notepad so that you're ready for these exercises. They will change a lot of our thought processes. So make sure you're ready for this. And I do want to
and so, a lot of times we don't know that we fall into restriction. So I want to talk about restriction for a minute, because people maybe a little bit understand binging a little, but restricting in an eating disorder community, there's a disease called, part of an eating disorder disease called ARFID, which it's restrictive avoidance disorder.
Okay. ARFID?
Yeah, restrictive avoidance disorder. And so what that is, I'm just even looking it up as I say it, ARFID. And the meaning behind it is it stands for avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. Yes, avoidant restrictive. It's a new diagnosis in the DSM book, the medical book, and it usually is found first in children who are extremely selective eaters and sometimes have little interest in eating food. They may eat a limited variety of preferred foods, which can lead to poor growth and poor nutrition. So it can start at a young age. And a lot of parents, when their children do this, they'll say, oh, you're a picky eater. Oh, you're a picky eater.
Right. And it's also sometimes eating disorders like that are associated with children that have autism too, because they like what they like, certain foods as well. But this is interesting.
But it's an actual disorder and a
Mhm.
disease that can be actually very deadly. And so when you have a child who you think is a picky eater, they
Yeah.
could have actually be right in the midst of an eating disorder. And it's really important to understand it because they say that a lot of times it can begin when children start tasting textures, and then they might choke a little bit. So if they get a choking, like they might choke on food a little bit when they're first, they get that fear then that this food is going to choke me, and they
Right.
can't breathe. So they may then not like. So I know some kids, I won't name who, that all they'll eat are buttery noodles or mac and cheese.
Right.
Because it's soft and it's not, it's not like a steak would be or something like that. So you start to have to do, it's called exposure therapy, where you just slowly, reintroduce them to certain foods and help them work through that trauma and fear. And there are treatment centers and therapists. You have to find a trained eating disorder therapist to work through these issues. And I had this, and mine began from the age of 5.
Okay.
When I would eat my food and I kept getting tummy aches. And I tell my dad, I'm getting a tummy ache. And being raised in the 50s, they would say, well, clean up your plate, clean up your plate. Well, I was getting tummy aches all the time and I didn't want to eat. And so I started to learn at a young age to chew my food and then spit it out in a napkin and pretend like I was eating.
Wow. So that became your habit.
But I wasn't eating. I kept getting more and more malnourished because I just was afraid to eat because my stomach hurt. Well, it wasn't until 50 years old, 45 years later, that I got diagnosed with genetic celiac disease. And so the reason I was getting sick is everything I ate had gluten in it. We'd eat pasta and cereal and bread. And I kept having tummy aches over and over and over, and no one would listen to me. And so that began my disease of ARFID, refusing to eat. And then it accelerated more when my parents divorced. My mom worked nights and we became latchkey children. We'd come home from school and there'd be no one home. And so we'd have to learn how to make our own meals. And so I would sit in front of a TV and eat my meals instead of a kitchen table. And I learned at an early age how to numb out my emotions of being lonely and scared because we were lonely and afraid. And so you would eat without connecting the food. As you would eat it, you wouldn't even taste it because you were numbing out. And so that starts to set you up later in life to binge eat. And so it's amazing when you do your food history, what you discover. And then also during that time of my life, Kim, my mother in the summer months, she wanted to sleep in, or she'd like to have men over. So she would throw us out of the house at 8 a.m. and we'd wander the neighborhood or the backyard with no way to get in the house to go to the bathroom or to eat. So I learned at an early age to, with the restriction, my neighbors would see us and they'd invite us in their home to use the bathroom. And the one neighbor would ask if we wanted a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Well, I was embarrassed and ashamed that I was hungry. So I'd say, oh, I'm not hungry. So again, learning at an early age how to restrict food. So then fast forwarded to 14 years old when I went to a boy's house that I really liked. And while there, he pushed me down on the couch and he raped me. And so after that, I didn't want to develop a feminine body. And I began taking speed drugs so that I wouldn't eat. Again, restricting meals and having no appetite.
Gracious.
So you see when you do the timeline of food, and then later on in life, I became a cocaine addict. And when you do cocaine, you don't want to eat. And so I went for many years just eating 1 or 2 or 3 bowls of cereal a day. And by the time I got clean and sober, I was down to 97 pounds and my eyes were sunken in. So my history of restriction was very big. Now, when I found the Lord, I got pregnant with my son right at the time I found the Lord. And during my pregnancy, it was the first time I discovered sugar. And then I really, really, really fell in love with peach pies. So I could buy a peach pie and eat the whole thing in one sitting with my hands.
So now you're going into the binging mode.
I went into the binging now.
Wow,
okay.
Wow.
So I brought that up so that we can see with this exercise, if everybody's ready now. On one side of the page under binging, here's some things that I'm aware of people do and I do. Do we binge on work?
So what do you binge on is what you're writing on one column.
Right. But I'm giving people ideas so that they'll know. So one column is the binge.
And then the other column is what are things that you are restricting in your life. Right. And this can be foods, it can be work, it can be anything, any area of your life. So write on a blank sheet of paper and just officially put what your answers are in both.
Right. So I'm gonna name some binge things so to help people. And if it's you, write it down or write. So I'm gonna say work, busyness, church, food, sex, shopping, spending money. Let's see, TV, activities,
social media.
Yep. Anything else you can think of?
Gossiping.
Gossiping. Yep. So anything that you binge on, you can keep making your list anytime. So things that you binge on. The other thing would be, what do you restrict?
Oh, you know what? I want to add this one too. Negative thoughts. Sometimes people can binge on negative thoughts. I'm just typing in the comments here, so you'll have some ideas of things that people do binge on.
And just other things, anything else you can think of. So drugs, alcohol, food.
Alcohol.
Yep.
Food.
Relationships. I binge on relationships.
Okay. Work, church.
Yeah, church. So those are some things that we can binge on. So on the other column, just for time's sake, restriction. What do I restrict? I can restrict food. I can restrict sex from my husband or spouse, I can restrict connection because I'm so busy. I can restrict my relationship with God, not taking time to pray. I can restrict exercise. On the binge size, too, put down that you can binge on exercise, because sometimes people binge and go to the gym 7 days a week and work out 2 and 3 hours. And that's actually an eating disorder, Kim. It's over exercising is an eating disorder where you burn off every calorie you take in.
Right.
So restrict exercise, restrict, I'm just thinking, just let me think. I'm
exercising, restricting.
I have a whole list.
Certain pleasures that you have in life is something that people do too. And you all in the studio audience, put some things that that people either binge on or people restrict.
How about restrict love? I restrict love. Restricting boundaries. You restrict boundaries.
Yes, this is
you don't have healthy boundaries. You restrict boundaries. You restrict relationships because you restrict going out after COVID. You still have a fear of leaving the house. So that could be even, it's like I restrict, I'm going to sit at home. You restrict taking vacations. You don't take time to relax and
Taking
enjoy
time
life.
for yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
taking vacations.
How about restricting self-care?
Mm-hmm. I'm
Mm-hmm.
typing everything you're saying over here. This is excellent.
Yeah.
Restricting self-care and so
Mm-hmm.
many other things that people restrict too. So if any of you all want to share some of the things you personally came up on with your list, go ahead and put it in the comment section. And if you want to pop on screen directly and share it, you can copy and paste this link into the browser and it'll bring you right into the broadcast.
Well,
So these
Kim,
are
I'll send you an email with my list because it's got about 20 on each side, and I
okay.
have it on a spreadsheet, and then you can share that with your audience as a gift from me.
Oh, wow. Okay. Because I think this jars people's thought processes as to what to even put in certain categories. Sometimes I know before in my life, I was like, oh, I was binging on some chocolate chip cookies, right? So that's a binge thing. It's not, I wasn't binging, I just was eating it frequently, but I didn't eat any other snacks because I like what I like. So I just was like, well, is that binging? I don't really think that's binging because I don't like certain snacks. So you like what you like, you know?
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought that up because one of the treatment centers I went to, ERC in Chicago, they have them all over, eating recovery centers, is I was in the binge recovery program. And one of the things, again, a lot of recovery from these things is called exposure therapy. And
Okay.
so in order to heal, you do the exposure. So when we were in treatment for binge eating, one of the things we had to do is we had to do an exercise of eating for 5 days in a row a pleasure food. So if your pleasure food was chocolate chip cookies,
Right.
they had you eat a chocolate chip cookies, 2 of them, because the normal serving is usually 2 chocolate chip cookies every day for 5 days. So you could realize of what it would be like to have that pleasure food every
Right.
day. So we had to do that. And then the other thing is we had to do what was called a planned splurge. So what a planned splurge would be is, let's again say that chocolate chip cookies was a food that you ate was your pleasure food. So planned splurge would be 1 day a week, you could plan a splurge. And so if the normal serving size was 2, on that day, you'd get 3. You'd get 3, not 15, 3. So you'd get the 1 serving and a half. So if the serving is 2, you'd get 3 that day. And then you plan it once a week so you wouldn't binge on it the rest of the time.
That worked well for you?
Yeah. And then the other thing you'd learn to do is like this one was a hard one, really, really hard. Is popcorn. And so one of the things they would teach us to do is, and I always would buy the big bucket. So they took us to the movie theater and we had to buy a snack at the movie theater. But instead of getting the bucket, I had to buy the small bag of popcorn with butter. And then so I went from a big bucket to a small bag, and then you had to stop halfway.
Okay, so now wait, let me visualize because I'm a visual person. You had, instead of the big bucket that's refill and you can eat as much as you want and you can't wait to kind of go dump the last little kernels out to go get a refill, right? That's the theory, right? So you have the big bucket. Instead, you now went to a small, which is like this small pretty much.
Yep.
And only eat half of the small.
Right.
And what was the theory behind that? I don't get it.
Well, you're training your mind not to do deprivation, total deprivation. So sometimes people think, I can't eat popcorn anymore because I'm going to binge. So you start training yourself as, yeah, you can. You just have a small bag of popcorn and only have a half. So like I now like to buy the bags of skinny popcorn that come in small little servings, 1 serving. And so when I want popcorn, I'll grab a small little bag of skinny popcorn and I savor the bites, because what you start to learn how to do to get well is you start to learn how to do three things when you eat. You do three things. You experience the taste, the texture, and the temperature of each bite.
Experience the taste.
The texture
Can
and
you
the
type that for me, Mackenzie, backstage, if you don't mind? Because I'm trying to do too much over here. So
the
I'm like, wait a
taste,
minute.
the texture, and the temperature. So
Okay.
for example, you put the popcorn in your mouth and chew it.
Mhm.
And as you're chewing it, you go, what does this taste? Is it sweet? Is it sour? Is it bitter? Or is
The
it
taste,
salty?
the texture, and what was the
That's
third one?
in temperature.
And temperature. Okay.
Mhm. So
Temperature.
taste would be salty, sweet, bitter, something like that. So, or sour. That's a taste. Those are
Okay.
tastes. And the next is texture. Is it crisp? Is it crunchy?
Hmm.
Is it hard? Is it soft? That's a texture.
Okay.
A texture. And of course, the temperature. Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it warm? Is it
Mm.
cool?
Good.
And so, why you do this while you eat, it slows you down and helps you to connect with the food instead of your emotions.
That's good.
And when you connect with the food as nourishment instead of the emotional eating, you really, really then start to embrace food as nourishment instead of
That's
um,
good.
instead of stuffing your feelings down. And lastly, what they taught us is, and this is very hard for me to do. So what I'm sharing with you all, it's very difficult to do the last one for me. This is my hardest one, is you should never eat faster than 15 minutes. So if you eat in 5 minutes, it's too
Yeah.
fast. It's too fast. And if you eat slower than 30 minutes, it's too slow. So if someone
Okay.
takes 45 minutes to eat one meal, it's too slow. So
Interesting.
a good way to practice balance in that is when you sit down to have your meal, look at the clock when you start. So if it's now, if let's say it's 8:30 in the morning, look at the clock, and as you're taking a bite of food and you're connecting with taste, texture, and temperature, make sure that you don't finish it before 15 minutes. Slow it down, put your fork down,
Oh
and
yeah.
then take another bite. If it's getting to be 25 minutes and you're not done, speed it up because you need to be done in 30 minutes. What that does is it gives the brain the ability to know when you're full.
Good. Yeah, I love this, and I read a book about some of this that you're saying, and it does get you in a different thought process. When I buy like a soda now, if it's something that I specifically have a taste for, I'll just like sip a few sips of it, just so I'm not depriving myself, or I'll get the mini can, and then I toss the rest, only because I don't want to be in a situation where I can't have it, and I'm telling them you cannot have this type of thing. So that theory that you're saying has worked for me some too.
Well, deprivation doesn't work. It just does not work. It sets you up for a binge. Anything in life you deprive yourself of, I mean, so think about it. When you deprive yourself of anything, don't you think about it all day long?
Yes, Lord. Yes. Yes is the answer.
Yeah. So deprivation, and that's why, and I'll go to the next one. Another very severe eating disorder today is called orthorexia. And
Never heard of
orthorexia is where you start getting into this deprivation mode of believing anything that has processed food in it, anything with sugar, anything with gluten, anything with MSG, anything that's not clean eating is bad for you and is going to kill you. Now, so when you think about that, if you've there's even restaurants now on the window, it says clean food. We serve clean food and
Oh,
clean food
okay.
like paleo and keto food. and gluten-free. Everything is clean. Well, so then you get into deprivation mode that you will never, ever, ever, ever eat a dessert again that has sugar in it. You will never eat gluten. You will never, ever eat anything processed. And so that puts you into instead of anorexic, you become orthorexic.
Yeah, I'm reading on that right now too. This is interesting. Okay.
Yes. And what happens then, you get to a place that you won't even go to a family function because the food might not be clean enough. And you will no longer go out with friends or family to a restaurant because you're fearful the food's not clean enough. Okay. And so I do believe that we need balance from the balance doctor, that eating sugar every day is really not that healthy for you, nor is processed food.
Right.
But again, if you had 2 cookies a week, or you had, maybe pancakes once a week or twice a week. So if you're doing it occasionally, but really still staying in balance by eating healthy, nutritious fruits and vegetables and protein, you'll be in balance. So
well, that's why I brought you on today, because when we're talking from a balanced perspective and our viewers are tuning in, I want people to have an understanding of things like this. You said that you spent I want to make sure people understand. You had 8 years from a eating disorder, and you spent
no. I had an eating disorder since 5 years old.
Since you were 5 years old, right?
Since 5. And I've been recovering now for 8 years.
Okay, because when you were a child, you had already discovered, well, you didn't discover, but your parents and different situations, you were spitting the food out. You were doing everything that lent to this ARFID disorder, basically.
Yes.
All along, but you just didn't know what it was called.
Right. So I started off with restrictive avoidance disorder. I moved into like more anorexia when I got into crack cocaine. And then I moved into binge eating later on. So I've had all 3. And I went to treatment 5 times to recover. One treatment center I was at for 3 months just to get well. Eating disorders are one of the hardest diseases to heal from. People don't understand because food is everywhere. It's completely different than healing from drugs or alcohol.
Wow. And you know what? Some of the actual signs that you can look for with the ARFID, which I'll put this article in the comment section for you too, but it's avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, which is something that Jill actually suffered from. And dramatic weight loss, dresses and layers to hide weight loss or to stay warm, constipation, abdominal pain, cold intolerance, lethargy, and excessive energy, dramatic restrictions in types or amounts of food that you eat, and will only eat certain textures of food. You have fear of choking or vomiting, lack of appetite or interest in foods, and no body image disturbances or fear of weight gain. So it's a lot of different ones, and it's in the nationaleatingdisorders.org article, and I'll put that in the comments section for you.
Well, and I'm glad you read that, because one thing that came up that happened to me as well. When I was 7 years old, I got really sick with the flu, and I ran to the bathroom to throw up, and I got to like one step before the bathroom and I vomited on the carpeting. And my mother was so dysfunctional, Kim. She went and got a bucket and a rag and made me clean up my own vomit at 7 while I was sick. While I was sick. The smell of that while I was sick caused me to be fearful of ever throwing up again my whole entire life. So the only time I've ever vomited since 7 years old is on a couple of occasions when I was totally drunk and spun out. And about 6 months ago, I got severe vertigo, and the vertigo spinning out made me throw up like vials of vomit. Other than that, I was fearful. So I guess bad news is I was fearful. Good news, I never became a binge eater and a bulimic. I didn't go into purging because I was like sometimes binge eaters are binge eaters and they become bulimics with throwing up to get rid of the food. I never became bulimic because I was scared to death to throw up.
Right, right. So you've had a lot of different traumatic experiences. You talked about being raped. You talked about dealing with crack cocaine, losing weight down to the point where you were 97 pounds. And ultimately, you became a mom, I think, at a
My
very young age, right?
now 28. I was 28
Okay.
when I got pregnant.
So, but you were a single mom for how many years?
17.
For 17 years. And so what was that like? I want you to talk about that when we come back after this commercial break, okay? We're talking with Jill Reynolds from Brave Heart Workshops, and clearly she has a resilient, brave heart to be here sharing her story today. We'll be right back right after this break.
My father had 4 of his fingers amputated in a workplace accident. It was the first injured individual I represented, and I knew I had to win that case. When someone walks into my office and they've been injured, I know what they're going through. If you've been injured at work with Hunter and Everett. We've got the experience, so let us help you.
All right, everyone, we're back and we're talking with Jill Reynolds. And I would like for you to talk about being a single mom, because a lot of viewers here do serve as single moms.
Well, my pregnancy was like a one-night stand. So I didn't even know the guy. I had met him once before, and he had told me he'd like to come over and bring some cocaine. And I said, well, I don't do coke anymore, and I'm not sleeping around. And he asked me why. And I said, because I found God. So he came and he says, well, can I come over so you can tell me about God? So he did. And I didn't know it was really Satan showing up at my door. So within 10 minutes, he poured the vial of coke out, and I fell and I got high. And then he wanted sex. And I told him I couldn't because I wasn't on birth control. And he said, well, I've had a vasectomy. So I had sex, and 4 weeks later I was pregnant. And so I started off with thinking first I was going to have an abortion. And then that's a whole nother story that God convicted me, and I chose life. And so the first memory I can tell you was when I delivered my son, which was a horrific delivery. I had a fractured tailbone. He had a fractured shoulder. It was a very traumatic childbirth. I remember when the nurse at the hospital went to hand me my son after delivering him. And I said, I'm not ready for this yet. I'm like, I got to go home with the baby. And it was like, that was the beginning. But as soon as I held him and started to bond, I nursed, I had a blessing happen to me. It was really weird. It was a blessing that the company I was working for at the time of my pregnancy, Kim, became fraudulent with the government, and they weren't paying taxes. And so I found out about it, and I resigned from the job. But then I was able to get unemployment because, I was unemployed.
Right.
So I was able to be on unemployment the first 9 months. So I was able to be a stay-at-home mom for months. Then my sister came home. She daycare for me. And I was able to work in my sales job and stop home at lunch and nurse him. So there was really good bonding with us. And so people would always say to me, oh, it must be hard being a single mom. And I look at them quizzically. I didn't understand what they were saying because I had a good career. I was making good money, and I had my sister caring for him. So he had a loving daycare, and he was like a fabulous child. And so, there were times he was strong-willed, and I did,
every child is. So,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But all in all, he and I were really, really, really close until we weren't.
Wow. Okay.
So I had to say that. So everything seemed perfect until he was getting out of 6th grade, and he begged me to let him go from Christian school to public school. So he went from a class size of 40 students, 2 classrooms each, 20 in each. So 1st grade, each class had 40 kids. He went from that to a public school system of 500 of sixth graders, 507. And so within 3 months, he was drinking, smoking pot, swearing, yelling at me, and really anger was coming out.
Wow.
And so I remember at one time saying to God, can you please take him back now?
Like, okay, I did not sign up for this. This is way more than I can handle, right?
And then God reminded me that at 14, after I had been date raped, I went from being a quiet, lost child to a scapegoat. And after I got raped, I started swearing at my mom and fighting back because my mom was very abusive to me. But up until 14, I took it. After 14, I started being just like my son. I swore, I started smoking, I started doing drugs. And so it was like, excuse the French on this show, but paybacks are a bitch. And they are, it's like, okay, what we gave our mothers, sometimes we get back as mothers.
You reap what you sow. That's a different version of me saying it that way. Yeah, you reap what you sow. So whatever we sow out is what we're going to get back in some regard. And you can fill in the blanks however you want to from there. But oh yeah, Mackenzie's backstage. She done popped up the Views Express comment. She's like, where is it? Where is it?
Well, I like yours better. You reap what you sow. Thank you. That didn't come to mind because I remember as a kid, that's the way I thought. But now I'm a Christian. So reap what you sow is a much better way to say it.
It doesn't matter. The bottom line is at the end of the day, you're going to get what you get if you poured out what you gave out. So just best to go ahead and just pour out.
Exactly.
Goodness.
So again, I would say, and then the hardest decision I had to do as a mom, I think this was probably one of the most difficult things I had to do, is when my son started acting out, I had to, without against his will, admit him into a psychiatric hospital for teens and to help break his will. And one of the things we had to do, Kim, I literally couldn't sleep for 5 days. He was only there 5 days, but this was after he took a baseball bat to a door and threatened my life. And so what I found out, the best way to break a will is to have two therapists, one be the good therapist and one the bad.
Right.
And so in front of the patient, the bad therapist said, he's never going to change. We should put him into a home for troubled youth and not let him come back home. The good therapist said, we should give him another chance. And so what they told me to do in that room is, when we did this, we role played this in front of my son, but my son thought it was real.
Okay.
And they literally had paperwork in front of him, pretend paperwork, that I was going to sign him away to put him into a home for troubled youth, and that he wasn't able to come back home until he was 18. So I literally had to role this as the good therapist said, give him another chance. So I signed the paper away and said, that's it. You're not coming home. You're never going to see me or grandpa anymore. You're not going to see your cousins. So goodbye. And so he thought, and he was so mad, he didn't even flinch. He didn't flinch. Well, they, if the patients want to call home, the staff has to let them. Mm-hmm. So they told me that when he goes to put in the call, say that you're refusing the call. Don't accept his phone calls. So by the second night he called and I refused the call. The third night he called.
This is traumatic.
It was really hard. Well, by the fifth day, they said, come in now. And this time we're going to role play again. And you're going to, at the very end, you're going to tell him you changed your mind. So he's in the room. He's hysterically crying. Mom, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. And then at the end, I said, I changed my mind. You can come home now. But you're going to have very healthy boundaries and you are not going to talk back and you're going to follow the rules or else you're not allowed to come home. And he agreed. It was a huge shift. And I do believe, Kim, if I had not done that, he would have been one of those children that would have probably committed crimes, hurt others, injured others. And so I really believe that tough parenting is necessary when you have a child who's escalating, and thinking that you can handle it on your own. Usually most people can't. You need professionals. And yet it was very hard. I cried myself to sleep every night. It was the hardest thing I've ever done.
This is just eye-opening, because I would think as a parent, if you're going to refuse the calls and you've already told the child there's no way that they could come home ever, and regardless of whether it's a role play or not, and the child's mind is accurate because that's what they're receiving, that they would think that there might be a possibility of suicide. As you know, I don't know how, not every child, I don't believe, could withstand that level of rejection from someone that they want to be
I'm
with.
sure they have all kinds of things that they knew how to do on that, but it worked.
But it worked in your case. So to God be the glory.
Well, and one of the things they told me is why you have to be so dramatic is insurance only covers a lot of this for 5 days. So you don't have 2, 3, 4, 5 months. You have a short window to saving your child's life.
Wow. And in this case, this treatment facility role played with you and it worked in your favor. And now you have this son. I have a picture here. This son is the outcome.
Yep.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And you actually attribute his success to that moment in time.
Absolutely.
Wow.
He would never have made it, I don't think, without it. He's now a very, very, very professional young man. He's got gorgeous wife, 3 beautiful kids. Wow. Amazing. They're amazing, Christ-centered family. In fact, they're leaving to go to Honduras on a mission trip. He takes the kids on mission trips. He wants to show them how to serve others. So
look at God, what an amazing turnaround. And to have him be able to be a vessel, a vehicle of hope for other people now is just such an inspiration. And I would love, tell Jeremy, I know your name's Jeremy because I know your mama, but so anyway, Jeremy, I would love for him and his family to come and be a part of the Kim Jacobs show as well one day, just to talk about even their missions work and how important it is for parents to help develop young children to go on mission trips. Not a lot of people do that. So that would be
you know what's so funny? I got to tell you one more part of the story that's hysterical. Yeah. So when he was 17, I was at a retreat weekend, a Christian retreat weekend, not overnight, but I would go like from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. And it was a holiday weekend, and him and his buddies had my car, and they went to play sand volleyball. And on the way home, they do what typical teens end up doing. They saw kids do this, parents. And if you don't know this, open your eyes. Even Christian kids. So on the way back, his friend said, "Oh, look at that house has their garage door open and there's a refrigerator. Let me jump out and see if they have any beer." So the kid jumps out. He goes into this guy's garage, opens the refrigerator, and the man walks out and catches him. Well, he chases him down, gets my license plate, calls the police, and my son gets arrested.
Oh.
And he gets charged with criminal felony trespassing, And so he has to go to court. He gets out on a misdemeanor, but he has probation for a year. His probation officer says, "Jill, you've really done a great job raising him. He's really a great kid. They just made a stupid mistake. And I'd like to put his name in for a scholarship in Chicago with Project Lifeline for troubled kids. Would it be okay?" So he got awarded $25,000 to go to college. And so when he went off to college, and, as you're talking to friends sometimes, Kim, and says, "Oh yeah, my son got a scholarship." They said, "Oh, what, in academics or sports?" I said, "No, in stealing a beer." I said it was the greatest theft he could have ever had. It reduced his scholarship to 25,000. But what was the cool part of the story, he learned from that so much that when he got out of college, you know what he did?
What?
He ended up joining urban youth in St. Louis and mentoring a little Black boy for 7 years. He became a mentor.
That's so awesome.
And he gave back, and he loved mentoring.
Well, you can tell. I mean, he has a passion for what he does, And he's now on a mission, literally, with his family and for Christ to be able to go out and help change lives. And because of his own personal testimony, people will be even more apt to listen to him and learn from him. So I'm excited that you've shared a lot of his story on today's episode. I want to make sure, too, that I get a chance to hear about your resilient brave heart workshops. So when we come back after this commercial break, we're going to hear more from, let me also say, hey, D is on, and she said, God bless you, Jill. And who else? I saw some other people. I just want to say welcome to all of you that are here tuned in today to the Kim Jacobs Show. And please feel free to continue to put your comments. We'll be right back right after this episode sponsor break.
Welcome to Confidence Tones, where we use a proprietary audio development formula called audio immersion to provide an experience that's designed to help quickly and effortlessly generate positive change in the subconscious mind when used correctly. This experience is achieved using 4 primary building blocks: brainwave modulation, invocation of positive emotions, immersive imagination stimuli, and developmental suggestion. We know of no other source in the world that provides the synergistic combination. With a good pair of headphones, you'll be able to immerse yourself into audio that's designed specifically to help you feel better, do better, and live better.
I love that. Everyone. I love that. Confidence tones. Those are cool.
Yeah, you definitely want to get some. Tell Dr. Jody Bear that Kim Jacobs sent you over there. But confidencetones.com, and the phone number, you can reach directly out to America's top health coach, Dr. Jody Bear, at 800-820-0584. Make sure you reach out to her and get your pair of your confidence tones. Also, today's episode sponsor is attorney Charles Everidge with Hunter Everidge Law Firm, and they deal heavily with disability cases. They also deal with workers' compensation. And definitely, if you have wrongful death of a loved one, reach out to them at 704-251-2945. They're in the Richmond, Carolinas, and the Alabama area. Okay. All right. So talk to us about your resilient, brave heart, woman.
So I'd like to share, I won't go into the whole story, but I have an amazing spiritual story about train whistles that God gave me when I began healing. When a train would go by, God would remind me that sound of the train was to remind me that he's never abandoned me and he'll always be there. So that's the back end of the story. So when Larry and my husband and I moved to Branson.
Oh, wait. Don't just brush over Larry. Because Larry came into the picture when you had been a single mom for a long time. So take at least 2 minutes to tell us about the Larry version of how y'all met and how y'all became one.
Well, I won't go into that. That's a long story.
I know it's such a long story.
No, it's too big. We met at a codependent retreat weekend. So that's a story in itself.
Okay. Here's Larry.
Yeah,
You've been married since how long?
Yeah, when Jeremy was 10. I married him when Jeremy was 17, and we've been married 23 years now.
There you go, Larry. Pleasure to meet you virtually. All right. Okay, go ahead.
So
train whistle.
Yeah. So when Larry and I went to retire, and we stepped property there, train went, and I looked at, this is where we need to build our home. So the train goes by throughout the week at various times between 11 and 3, all different times. But when it goes by, God will say, I told you I'd never leave you or abandon you. So he tells me a story. So about 2.5 months ago, he wakes me up from sleep and says, Jill, for such a time as this, with the insanity going in the world today, with cancel culture and all of the drag queen shows and everything going on at schools today, for such a time as this, we need to come alongside of younger women, like in Titus. Titus 2 says older women need to mentor younger women so that they'll grow up living their life, Kim, wisely, purely, and to do good in the world.
Yes.
And so he said, we need to do a conference. And a therapist years ago told me I was one of the most resilient patients she'd ever have after all my trauma.
Yeah.
So my tagline, my company is called Braveheart Workshops, but God then put the word resilient in front of me when I speak. And so now my tagline is resilient Braveheart. So when God told me to do this conference in Branson, I felt like the name of it should be Resilient Brave Hearts for such a time as this. Well, our friend that's listening in, I met the amazing Dee Forbes, and she has a ministry called No Longer Broken. And I was supposed to speak at her event, but I had to cancel because of that day I had the vertigo and was throwing up. Satan kept me from going to her event. But her and I aligned, and she said, I said, you be a part of my upcoming event.
Yeah.
And then my good friend Brenda Ringwood out of Kansas City, she has a ministry called Becoming the Best You, and she's aligning. So this is so prophetic, Kim.
Yes.
So when we put it all together, listen to what God brought to light. It's called Resilient Brave Hearts who are no longer broken, and they are becoming the best you can be for such a time as this. And my tagline is to inspire hope, health, and healing in the world.
That you cannot get better than that. You cannot get any better than what you just said. That's all inclusive. One-stop shop.
So God brought Dee to me. He brought Brenda to me. And so everyone out there who's ever been broken, which is all of us, and you no longer want to be broken, anyone out there who needs resiliency, anyone out there that wants to become the best you so you can serve God, not for your own glory, this event is for you. And so the end of the story, which is amazing, is when God told me to do it, Kim, the first thing I said is, what? I'm 69 years old. You want me to do a conference by myself with no money? Like, how am I to do this? Like, I don't have a clue. And so he said, you're going to ask speakers to sponsor the event. And so I had 14 speakers step up and sponsor specific amounts of money to speak, and God handpicked them. And then I went around to theaters in Branson, and Yakov and his wife are going to be on vacation. So we got Yakov's Theater, which holds 2,000 people and at a reduced rate. And then somebody that's listened to my podcast saw that I was doing it. He reached out, and he lives 2.5 hours away. And his praise and worship band said that they'll volunteer and do praise and worship. And then I had 2 anonymous donors. So the only thing left that we need, because God's, told me
everything you need, right?
He's provided everything. There's only one last thing, and this will be your audience. God told me, and I said, but how am I going to get the word out? He goes, everyone that hears about this, you're going to tell them. So Kim, I guess you're stuck now. And you're going to tell them to buy a ticket and come to the event, come to Branson, and then tell all their friends and every woman to come to Branson for such a time as this, August 19th and August 20th, to come to an event that's going to equip women to mentor girls. And so you can go now to braveheartworkshops.com and get tickets. Now, God told me the price. He said, charge $12 for those people in need and $28 for those who could afford a ticket. And if you're bringing a friend, you can buy 2 tickets, and the second ticket is half off. So 2 tickets is $42.
Wow.
And if you're coming with a church group, you can buy 12 tickets and only pay for 10. You get 2 tickets for free.
So awesome.
And then last but not least, this is amazing. You can come back on, Kim. And what last but not least is the Holiday Inn Express here in town called me when they heard about it. And they offered us a hotel rate for a room with 2 queen beds for only $104 a night. The room should be $160 a night. So it's
Wow.
going to be $104 a night. So if you have a girlfriend, it's only $52 per person per night.
You
But
cannot beat this, everybody. Let me put it up. Let me put it up again. That's why I have my glasses on. I want to read it here. Resilient Bravehearts Girls and Women's Conference. And you definitely want to be there at the Yakov Theater in Branson, Missouri. You can go to braveheartworkshops.com. Braveheartworkshops.com. It's August 19th through the 20th. And it starts at 8:30 a.m. on that Saturday and ends at 6 p.m. on that Sunday. You don't want to miss this opportunity to
well, and as you can see, the picture is a bus. So that's your church group coming by bus. And I say that because churches all around the United States, Kim, right now are bringing in busloads of women and girls to come to Branson, because in Branson, there's a Christian theater called the Sight and Sound Theater. They have one in Branson and one in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And starting in March this year, all the way through the end of the year, they have the play Queen Esther is playing in Branson. And so I'm telling everyone to come in early on the 18th. They have a show on the 18th that's at 3:30 in the afternoon and 7:30 at night.
Oh,
So
that's gonna be epic.
So what you have to do is come in at least one day early, go see Esther, because you will be blown away. It's spectacular.
Oh.
And the Spirit of God will fill you, and you will be empowered and on fire for the Resilient Braveheart Conference the next day. And the speakers are amazing. We have someone talking on walking in love, one about pursuing your faith, one overcoming obstacles, one will be finding joy. It's just, the topics are on my website. They're amazing. And we're going to do breakout sessions.
Wow.
And we're praying. We started a GoFund page for praying for sponsors, because the money we collect for sponsorship, we are going to invite the homeless women, the domestic violence women, and the recovered addicts to come for free. We are going to make them our VIPs, and we're going to usher them backstage and have eunuchs, volunteer eunuchs, wash their feet and polish their nails like Esther was presented and beautified and put oil on. And we're going to present these forgotten people to God.
Wow. You all don't miss this opportunity to be a part of the Brave Hearts, in this case, because they're dealing with a lot of hearts, workshops for the girls and women in Branson, Missouri. So you don't want to miss this. And how can people stay connected with you, Jill Reynolds, as well? I want to put that up for you.
Yes. And anybody can call me and I'll get back with you quickly. Email's best, or text. But I really am praying that anyone that hears this, please just don't say, oh, I wish I can come. I MapQuested around the country, Kim. Harrison, Arkansas is 45 minutes. Little Rock's like 2 hours. Tulsa's 4. Kansas City's 4. St. Louis is 4. Dallas, Texas is 7 hours. Chicago's 8. Nashville's 8. Atlanta's 10. South Carolina is 15 hours. And I drove to South Carolina in a day and a half. So no excuses, girls. No saying, and this is one that people will make an excuse. People say, well, it's the weekend right before school. And I said, yep, because God picked that day. You know why? You know why God picked that day? Because everyone will make excuses in the summer they can't come because they're on vacation. Everyone will make excuses in the fall that they can't come because of sports with their kids. Everyone will make excuses in the winter they can't come because of the holidays. And so God said, we're going to do it the weekend before school. Why? To empower and inspire and transform the lives of young girls before the 2023-2024 school year begins and the insanity takes place when they go back to school. They'll be prepared. how to stand firm in the Lord, right, Kim? They got to stand
Yes.
firm.
How to stand against the wiles of the enemy as they go back. Right. I agree.
So
Well,
this is for girls 12 years old and up. So moms, you
12
want
years
to
old
bring
and
your
up.
daughters. And we decided, Kim, we decided to allow, I use the word allow, Mordecai's to come. So if men want to come, because Mordecai was important to Esther as her cousin who raised her when her parents died. So if you have a Mordecai in your life who wants to support you, they can come with you to the event.
847-917-9693 is how you'll call Jill. She will answer. And you can also email her at braveheartworkshops@gmail.com. I have podcast listeners on iHeartRadio and iTunes and SoundCloud and all of that. Sound Deezer, Podchaser, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's why I want to make sure they hear that the email is braveheartworkshops@gmail.com. That's how you can stay connected with her. And you don't want to miss that opportunity. I did put in the comment section for you all as well that I'm hosting in the Charlotte, North Carolina area on Thursday. Now, if you're watching this as a replay and it's not the week of June 22nd when I'm hosting this, then just disregard this particular one. But this week, June 22nd, I'm hosting at the Charlotte Museum of History an annual summit where I will have a guest speaker, which is a CNN hero, Sandra Yancey. She's going to be talking to us about how to disrupt your business thought process. This woman is magnificent in her presentation skills. And as the managing director at eWomen Network in Charlotte area, I want to make sure that you know that I want you to be present. You can register. And let me see if I can share this video clip from Sandra right quick. Let me see. Yep, I go right here to Facebook. And I am going to share this with you so you can hear directly from her for a second. Hold on. If I can make it large. Okay, here we go. I'm going to put it started over and see if you can. Oh, yeah, you can't see her yet. I'm going to pull her in for a second. You can hear it, but you can't see it.
And it's really important when times are different that you show up differently. So I'm coming to Charlotte on Thursday, June the 22nd. We're going to get together from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we're going to spend the day really learning strategies and tactics for.
We're right here.
Hey there, it's me, Sandra Yancey. I'm so excited to be coming back to Charlotte, North Carolina. You know, times have changed, right? And everything post-COVID has shifted. And it's really important when times are different that you show up differently. So I'm coming to Charlotte on Thursday, June the 22nd. We're going to get together from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we're going to spend the day really learning strategies and tactics for exploding our business during different times. And I've got 7 things that I've done. I'm going to be sharing them all with you so that you can identify the one thing that can change everything for you and your business. This is a time to lean in and let your customers know that you see them, you value them, you know what they're thinking, and you are still the person that has the solution for whatever it is that they need. So join me June 22nd. All the information is right here on this page from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. See you then.
All right. I just wanted to make sure you all know to be in the house at the Charlotte Museum of History, and you will thank me. You'll thank me for sure for it changing your business and your life, because it is going to be a game-changing experience. So the information on where you can register, you can copy and paste this into your browser, and it will get you registered for this event on Thursday, June 22nd. All right. Any closing comment, Jill? We're going to close out here.
I just thank you. I want to really hold you in love with the Lord for your event. And if everyone, you know, if you really, really, really can't come to Branson, would you just do one thing? Would you intercede in prayer that God calls by name the women who are supposed to be here and to register today? So please pray for the event. Please pray for girls to grow up and live their life wisely, purely, and to do good in the world for such a time as this. Thanks so much, Kim.
Thank you so much, Jill Reynolds. What a wonderful, resilient, brave heart that you have. Thank you all for being in the virtual studio audience. I saw your friend said she loves you dearly, and she just thanks God for using you. Thank you all for tuning in today. We will be back tomorrow with someone that's going to be talking about how to settle those situations that you may be dealing with when you're writing letters and you get meeting resistance. He's like something to do with like settling these big, he calls himself the settle shark is what it is. So anyway, he's going to be here and tell you how he's going to do some shark work to help you get balance in your life when it comes to some financial obstacles that you're dealing with. You don't want to miss that. I'll see you tomorrow at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for all of our episode sponsors. Thank you, Jill. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of The Kim Jacobs Show and for being in the virtual studio audience. Your presence truly does make a difference, and I look forward to you bringing your friends and family to join you in the virtual studio audience Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time.